On Power and Politics this week.
It's scary, but at the end of the day, we're going to be okay.
The year our world turned upside down.
And I'm declaring a public health and civil preparedness emergency.
We look back at the lows.
It's difficult, it's unprecedented, and it's history in the making.
The highs.
This is a momentous day for all of us, and I'm so privileged to be part of it.
And the long road ahead.
Women have been disproportionately impacted.
This week, a special Power and Politics. COVID, 1 year later. Welcome to this special edition of Power and Politics. I'm John Craven. Exactly 1 year ago today, Governor Lamont was on this very set preparing Connecticut for a lockdown. So, Governor, we've only got a handful of cases so far. Why declare an emergency now?
We've been able to see what happened in China. We've been able to see what's happening in Italy.
Well, just days later, Governor Lamont would shut down much of the state for months as COVID cases spread rapidly across Connecticut. For the past year, the governor has used dozens of emergency executive orders. They have saved lives. But this week, a judge said many of them could be out of order.
We're going to be talking a little bit about our continuing opening strategy.
Lamont has closed and reopened schools, restaurants, and stores, all through emergency orders. But in a new opinion, a judge says it's likely the governor exceeded his constitutional authority. The judge suggesting lawmakers must approve orders after 6 months. The opinion, part of a pending legal challenge to Lamont's school mask mandate.
He was giving his editorial view on it, but he wasn't making a decision.
The state attorney general says the opinion is just an opinion. All of Governor Lamont's orders can remain in effect until the state Supreme Court weighs in.
And the state Supreme Court has been clear to date that the governor has extraordinary authority, broad authority during a public health emergency.
A new poll says 70% of people approve of how Governor Lamont is handling the pandemic. And last week, he said he's unlikely to extend the emergency past April 20th.
So I guess the question is this a moot point at this point?
But a University of New Haven legal analyst says this case is about future emergencies.
I think he was foreshadowing or at least providing a warning.
Well, you just heard Attorney General William Tong says the law is clear. He says this week's opinion changes nothing.
There may have been some commentary by His Honor, and he has every right to express his opinion. But at the end of the day, Judge McCoucher acknowledged that it's up to the state Supreme Court. And by and large, as you know, John, the people of the state are grateful that we are safe.
You mentioned the state Supreme Court. In December, they did rule that Governor Lamont has the authority to close bars and restaurants. Is there any reason to think that they would change course based on what this opinion says?
No, and before that, there was the litigation around our state's absentee ballot laws, right, which also went before Judge McCoucher. You may recall I personally litigated that case and argued that case before the state Supreme Court. And it was the same reasoning in the absentee ballot case, in the bar case, and here in the mask case. The bottom line is this: when we're in an emergency, remember everybody, we're in an emergency, right? That has cost thousands of people their lives here in Connecticut. I've never seen something like this before in my lifetime, neither of you, John.
I want to get into some of the legal arguments that Judge McCoucher made, though. He said it's likely Governor Lamont can't extend these orders beyond 6 months without getting state lawmakers' approval. Your thoughts on that? How do you read the law?
When he used the language likely, for example, he was giving his editorial view on it, but he wasn't making a decision. And there's a real distinction there, John, between when judges comment on the law, or they comment on public policy issues, or they comment on challenges that we're facing. There's a difference between that and making a decision on the merits of the facts before him.
One other thing that the judge wrote in this opinion was that the emergency laws themselves can be confusing. He wrote, there are likely defects in the text of the emergency statutes. Given the incredible power that this does give the governor, do these laws need a rewrite?
Could the legislature take a look at it and decide that they want to strengthen it? Of course they could.
But you know, a lot of people at home are watching this and saying, okay, these orders have been extended well past a year now.
Yes.
Does the law allow the governor to extend these orders beyond 6 months without the legislature weighing in?
So again, I believe the governor has broad authority, extraordinary authority in a public health emergency. And as a lawyer for the state of Connecticut, which includes the governor, when acting in his official capacity, I think that he has exercised his authority constitutionally, lawfully, and will continue to do so.
Well, since Governor Lamont's emergency powers end in 6 weeks, this opinion won't have any effect now. But University of New Haven legal analyst Robert Sanders says it could make a big difference in a future disaster.
I think he was foreshadowing, or at least providing a warning.
Let's talk about some of the strong language he used. The judge wrote, Rome wasn't built in a day, but its descent into tyranny was almost that quick. That's some strong language.
Well, remember now, we're just less than 60 days, or just over 60 days from an insurrection on the capital of the United States, based on an executive branch activities and overreach and acquiescence by the legislature. So I think all of that's got to be coloring this.
Two things stick out in this opinion. One, the judge says Connecticut's emergency laws are confusing. And two, I don't believe that the governor can extend these beyond 6 months. How do you read what he wrote?
Well, on his face. So he's saying, look, you have inconsistent legislative provisions here that the legislature needs to reconcile. I'm a different branch. I point out the error to you guys, and then you guys go and fix it.
Now, if people are watching at home, they might be a little confused because just 3 months ago, the state Supreme Court upheld Governor Lamont's restaurant rules. And now we have this judge saying he likely exceeded his authority. Who's right here?
Well, the higher court's going to decide who's right here in this state. You know, the state Supreme Court is eventually going to say yes or no. The judge also said in this case, hey, you know, it's been a couple of months since this first was considered, and other things have happened since then. And the Supreme Court, when it finally makes its ruling, will probably want to take into consideration the things that have happened.
This all may be a moot point anyway. Last week, Governor Lamont announced that he's probably not extending the emergency past April 20th.
We have a new general counsel. That team will probably be looking through all the executive orders, working with the legislature, deciding which of those we may want to continue past April 20th, perhaps the mask mandate for students so everybody can be in school safely.
So I guess the question is this a moot point at this point?
It's not a moot point if you really take into consideration what the judge was saying in this, we won't call it a ruling, in this opinion.
We're really talking about what could happen in the future.
Hey, this is a precautionary, hey, I'm sending up the warning order. I want everybody to be advised that there are problems in the offing. And if we don't stand with a clear eye, look at potential problems and move in ways, keep them from happening, then we're missing our duties.
Well, like we mentioned, Governor Lamont has signaled he'll let the state of emergency expire on April 20th. How many of his executive orders become law, including mask mandates and business rules, remains to be seen. Well, the pandemic has hit women especially hard. Next, the Lieutenant Governor joins us to talk about getting women's workforce relief. Welcome back to this special Power Politics. I'm John Craven. The COVID pandemic has hit women especially hard. They make up a disproportionate chunk of essential frontline workers, and even more women have had to leave their jobs while their kids go to school from home. As we mark 1 year of COVID, Lieutenant Governor Susan Bysiewicz is trying to ease the burden on women. She told me it's a top priority.
It's been a priority actually every day and every month. One of the first things that the governor did when we took office is to make sure we created a council on women and girls. And that is a council that includes every one of our commissioners. So all of our cabinet secretaries and I and Melissa McCaw, my co-chair, meet regularly to make sure that whatever part of government is taking a policy action, that they consider the impact on women and girls. And this month, we are looking forward to kicking off our paid family and medical leave program. That started at the beginning of January. So 66,000 employers have signed up to participate in the program. And we're waiting, by the way, for 44,000 other businesses that are eligible. They just haven't signed up yet. And we want to make sure that every person has the opportunity to take paid leave should they get COVID or one of their relatives get COVID. I think that this pandemic has really highlighted why paid family leave is really essential.
Yeah, that really falls disproportionately on women a lot of times to take care of sick relatives, right?
It sure does. Women have been disproportionately impacted. And if you look at the different economic sectors that have been hit hard by the pandemic, it's retail, it's restaurants, it's the hospitality industry and social services, all of whom employ large numbers of women. And then put on top of that, John, the responsibility of parents to be at home and make sure their kids are doing their online learning. And so a lot of women just took off or didn't go back to their jobs so that they could be home and do that.
Now, earlier this month, you and the governor rolled out a series of legislative proposals to try to help women in the workforce.
And we did. And one of the biggest proposals that we have is a proposal that would allow women candidates who are running for public office to use the Citizens Election Program funding to pay for childcare. And here's the thing, when Jahana Hayes ran for Congress, she was able to use some of her campaign funds to pay for childcare for her 8-year-old son. Right now, that's not available at the state level. And so we are hoping that that's going to bring more women and more people from diverse backgrounds into elective office.
And for people who don't remember, that really got started here in Fairfield with Caitlin Clarkson Pereira, who ran for the state house. She really took it upon herself to start that fight.
She did, and she was a fierce advocate, and she actually took it to the court system as well. She was one of 35% of candidates that were women who ran in 2018. Interestingly, John, we have 34% women in our state legislature. So most of the women candidates who ran did extremely well. But we think that there would be more women interested in running for office if we allowed this. And by the way, male candidates, people like Roland Lamar and Gary Winfield, said that they would use money for childcare if they had the opportunity as well. So it's something that could benefit everybody.
Before we go, it is Women's History Month, and you've talked to me before about your mom's friendship with Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Talk to me about what it was like as a young female law student, a young woman who wanted to get into state politics. That road must have been pretty tough for you.
I feel blessed that along the way I had lots of men and women mentors. Were there moments when it was difficult? Absolutely. But I feel blessed to be in a position where I have the opportunity to ease the path and break down some of the barriers for other women. So I feel very blessed. And I do want to highlight somebody who is important in Connecticut history, but important to the country. There's a woman by the name of Alice Hamilton, who is a medical doctor in the late 1800s, early 1900s, who discovered that wearing masks during the Spanish flu pandemic would prevent the spread of infection. Alice Hamilton lived in East Haddam, taught at Harvard, and who would have thought that a person from Connecticut would help keep us all safe in our country?
So we can thank a woman from Connecticut for these masks that we wear every day.
Absolutely. Thank you, Alice Hamilton.
Well, speaking of Alice Hamilton, March is Women's History Month, and one Stamford lawmaker made history this week. Pat Billy Miller became Stamford's first black state senator, and for the first time ever, 2 black women are in the state Senate. Miller won a special election on March 2nd to replace Carlo Leone. All right, much more Power in Politics coming up. It has been a year we will never forget. Next, a look back at where we've been and where we're headed. Welcome back to Power in Politics. I'm John Craven. I took this picture on March 13th, 2020, the last Power in Politics we would tape here for months. Days later, I caught COVID. It was rough, very rough, but I fully recovered. I was lucky. A lot of our friends and neighbors were not. As of Thursday, more than 7,000 Connecticut residents have died of COVID-19. This week, a look back at where we are now and how it all began. March 6, 2020, Connecticut reports its first coronavirus case, a worker at Danbury Hospital from New York.
This is not unexpected, and we've been prepared for this.
Leaders were hopeful.
Look, we got this.
But the virus spread like wildfire.
We tend to double the number of people who are infected every 3-4 days.
Just days later,
I'm declaring a public health and civil preparedness emergency.
Within a week, Governor Lamont would close schools.
We all know we're safe and we're protecting ourselves from the scary coronavirus outside.
Restaurants.
St. Patrick's Day is postponed.
And non-essential businesses.
It's difficult. It's unprecedented, and it's history in the making.
Finally, on May 20th, hope.
We are reopening today. Today is our big day.
Stores reopened, followed by indoor dining and gyms.
I couldn't wait. I couldn't sleep last night.
But life was far from normal. Connecticut instituted strict travel rules.
Being asked to ask people to stay in their rooms for 14 days in the middle of summer, it's outrageous.
The fall would see a surge in cases. But as 2020 came to a close, light at the end of the tunnel.
Here we go, number 1.
The first vaccines arrived.
I'm so proud of it. This is a momentous day for all of us, and I'm so privileged to be part of it.
By February, Governor Lamont got his shot. A week later, he made the controversial decision to give out vaccines by age alone.
The lens was too broad. It was too badly ill-defined.
Finally, on March 4th,
while we're lifting the capacity limits,
Governor Lamont announced an end to travel restrictions and capacity limits at restaurants, which are still hurting.
It doesn't do anything for us until they cut back on the 6 feet rule.
And our thoughts go out to everyone who's lost a business, a job, and especially a loved one to COVID-19. That's all of our time for this week. We do want to hear from you. Email us or comment at news12.com or on our social media platforms. And you can catch Power in Politics every Saturday and Sunday at the times right there on your screen. That's our time. I'm John Craven. Thanks for watching and have a great and safe week.